It's interesting. I decided to use a new PC to do this presentation, this message. And in fact, now I'm going to be using an even newer PC. So just be patient with me. When I think about time, it's a special moment for me when I consider it, because at 11:14, a little less than 24 hours from now, I would have been given another time on this earth. For it will be my 58th year of living. Thank you. And I feel every year of it. In fact, I've gotten to the point where there's so many disabilities happening as a result of time. I can no longer kneel like I used to. I can no longer run like I used to. There was a time I used to tell the joke that my life of being such a bad person, when I would break into people's houses and take their TVs to support my drug habit, I've gotten to the point now where I am so old, I can't even run across the street with a TV guide, never mind a TV. But God is good, despite all of it. So the whole purpose of the message this morning is, Lord, give us time to make it in. To tell our sisters and our brothers how. Tell them how to make it in to your kingdom. Men are dying everywhere with no one to care. But with love we do yield to do thy will. I was wondering why the words were getting fuzzy. Now I know why. Another part of time, getting aged. Since we believe, we feel compelled to let everyone know. Give us time to tell our sisters and our brothers how. Tell them how to make it into your kingdom. We want everyone to know. Before I go on, I want to say a couple of comments. I've been in the Philippines now a year and 8 months, and I still love being here. I don't like the floods and chasing water around my home. I don't like the traffic, I guess that's how you would say it. But I'm getting used to it. I love the fact that I went through 18 months and did not see one snowflake. I'm so grateful that I did not slip on a patch of ice. And I enjoy living here so much. And I think I'm just going to stay the rest of my life. Though I know many of you want to go to where I come from, New York. Believe me, you're not missing anything. If you go, stay a day or so and then leave and come back, because this is where it's really a beautiful place to live. And another thing too, the people in this country are just so marvelous. Everybody is so happy, and everybody greets me with Sir Roy, you know, Oko, everything is Co. And I just love it, and the respect that is given here. I am very, very grateful to be here in your country. In fact, I would like to be received as a Filipino. It is interesting because I'll go to the SM Mall to do my shopping, and I just love it when the cash register person and they're just speaking that Tagalog at me, and I'm just like, and then when they finish, I guess they expected me to say something back, and I'm still like, you know, and then, oh, I sorry. I love that. I sorry. I still only know salamat and palaam or playam or however.
Paalam.
Thank you. And I don't foresee my learning much more Tagalog than that unless I'm given the gift of tongues. And I really don't see that happening anytime soon. but I'm grateful to be here. Also, one other point, when I first arrived here, I started going to the Arcellus Church. The reason why I don't go there as frequently now is because I can't understand a word that they're saying. But Dr. Medina was the first person that I heard speaking. And when I went to that church, I said, oh, okay, I can stay here. I can appreciate this church. And then this young lady, Dr., I don't know your name, but she was the second one I heard speak. And after I heard, I said, okay, I can stay here. I can appreciate this church. And then the young lady who was standing on this side when they sang that trio, quartet rather, who also from the Arcellus Church. You know, every time and I think you have a sister too, there's two of you that look so much alike. And no, I know I'm an American, and I don't go into that every Asian look alike thing. That's not it. But the point is that the music is just so pleasant, so beautiful. So in essence, I'm just really glad and grateful to be in your country. Our opening text was, or the scripture reading was Matthew chapter 24, verse 24. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such a time as you think not, the Son of Man cometh. I don't know about your experience, but have you ever been late for anything? This is the worst country to ask that question. With all the traffic and the jeepneys backing up and you can't catch a cab when you want to, you're always late. In my country, we have a thing for, we call it CP time, and it means colored people, you know, those of us who are darker. And it's a habit that we're always at least 1/2 hour late. In the Puerto Rico, where I used to live, it's generally accepted that you're going to be at least 1/2 hour late, so your boss has no trouble understanding that. In Atlanta, Georgia, where I also lived, the question that they will ask you on an application for a job interview is, where do you live? Because they will gauge whether or not you will get that job depending upon where you live. And if you don't live within a certain perimeter of that location, you won't get that job, no matter how qualified you are, because they expect and know that you're going to be at least 1 to 2 hours late living in that city. And here in this country, you just forget it. You know, you have no, maybe you do, have any idea how many times I have gotten off a jeepney and just said, I can walk this, I get there faster doing this. Especially now that they're doing all that construction over there off of
V-Mapa.
You know, I love, and I watch these guys, and they don't have all of the hard equipment that we have in the United States, all these big earth mover machines and so forth. And I'm watching these guys, and they're not that big, and they're chopping away stuff, and they're picking up stuff and moving stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then when they finish, and somehow it gets done faster than it is back home, it is so beautiful. It is so, it's just like, I'm just amazed. You know, and I'm just really glad to be here. But the point of the matter is, have you ever been late for something? That's a terrible feeling. You know, in my life experience, and I don't mind sharing this because it all illustrates a story. I don't mind telling people, and it's part of my testimony, that I was a drug addict. And the one thing that I hated was being late for when the supply arrived. I hated that. Because if that's something that you needed, something that you wanted, for you to be late, that was not a desirable position to be. How much so as Christians today, when we have this expectation that Jesus is soon to come? How many of us want to be late for his arrival? Oh, I didn't see any. Oh, I saw one. Nobody wants to be late for that. Do you not? We want to be there on time. Let's have a moment of prayer. Father, we thank you. We really appreciate what you do in our lives. And now, Lord, I'm going to step away and allow your Holy Spirit to come and do all the talking, because you do it so much better than me. In Jesus' name, amen. When I spoke with you the last time, about 10 months ago, I put a challenge out there. Do you remember what that was? Do you remember what that challenge was? I gave you, anybody? You can raise your hand. I'll entertain you. Well, instead of you. Anybody else? I made an admonition, and that was to do this, to read God's Word. Very simple, it's not that complicated, but to read God's Word from cover to cover. And it makes me wonder, what was your preference instead? How many other books might you have read, and without having read the Word of God at least once in these 10 months? Now, mind you, I made that proclamation 10 months ago, so that means you have 2 more months before December, when I spoke in this church last year, in December, to read God's Word. How many of you are students at the university? I know this is a university church. How many students? Don't be shy. Okay. How many books have you read? Oh, that one just said a lot. But how many books, how many books of the Bible have you read? There's 66. Now don't talk about Jude and Obadiah, those ones that have only 1 chapter. How many of you have finished reading Isaiah? 66 chapters. Ezekiel, 48, I believe. Genesis, 50. Exodus, 40. How many of you all have bothered to do that? How many episodes on TV did you watch and that you finished? How many movies did you see? Oh, we're not supposed to talk about movies here, right? But let's be honest. Some of us go, and the ones that we don't go to SM, we get them in the house, don't we? So how many movies did you watch as compared to the Bible? How many levels on the video game have you achieved? Let me ask you a question, because I'm one of those, and I admit it. I love Papa Pear. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Or sugar candy crush. That rings a bell. I'm in the 400s. I love those games, but I set aside time every day to read my Bible without fail. Let me give you an idea. I usually get up about 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't have a job. I don't need a job. I don't need to work anymore. But I get up. I maintain my groups. I have 4 Seventh-day Adventist groups on Facebook that I maintain, the 4 largest ones. And I go through it, I approve all the requests, I disapprove people who want to join, we don't want to have. I go through, it takes me about an hour to do 4 groups. I minister about to 250,000 people in those 4 groups. And I'm done usually about 7:30. I don't take my breakfast until after I've had my morning devotions. I don't normally have breakfast until 12 or 12:30. That's how long it takes, because you see, I don't want to be late when Jesus comes. I can stand to go without a couple of meals. I went to the doctor and they used that big O word. In the United States, I am not obese. In the Philippines, I'm obese. You know, and sometimes I want to go back so I don't have to hear that word. But the point of the matter is that I take the time to get God's Word in my life first before anything else I do. And if it requires if you're a student or if you're working, if it requires you getting up extra early so that way you can be fed with God's Word first, that's what I would recommend that you do. How many of us try to save that time of Bible reading, reading your Sabbath school lesson. How many of you all try to do that just before you go to bed? And how many of you actually finish it before you fell asleep? That is the worst time to read your Bible, is before you go to bed. I don't even do it. I don't read my Bible at all before I go to bed. Why? Because I'm not going to retain it. I'm not going to remember anything. How many of you all read your lessons that you got to prepare for school just before you go to sleep at night? You know, you try to study when you're fresh, isn't that right? Doesn't it make sense then to do the same thing with God's Word? I think so. How many hours spent on Facebook as opposed to reading God's Word? You know what I find interesting? I find that people in this country can't do without these. And it's interesting to me because I'm watching people walking along Limapa, Mag Tai Tai, Mag Sai Sai. I don't even know the name of the streets yet. I should. And this is what they do. And I'm trying to figure out, how do they know where they're going? It's constant. And what's interesting to me, because I'm not a little guy, I love it when somebody is walking to me and they're doing this, and I stand right there. Let them run right into me. This is like getting a wall. And then I look at them, oh, sorry. You know, and if I'm in the mall and I can be nosy and look over their shoulder, because most of their shoulders are way down here anyway, and I look and see what they're actually working on, it's Facebook. They're talking. And it's interesting, nobody talks on the phone in this country like this. Hello. That's how you talk in this country. That's amazing to me, and it's interesting. But yet, I have to think that some of us here do the same thing. But how many times have you read your Bible? Did you read it at least once since last year we talked? How many hours did you spend for the benefit of others as opposed to yourself? And aren't we supposed to be about witnessing? To who? As compared to last year, are you more advanced in understanding of the Scriptures today than you were last year? Do you know more? Are you able to explain more? And when you discuss matters of biblical importance to other people, are you comfortable with what you're talking about? You have no idea of the many hundreds of people who will send me a note in my inbox. Brother, could you help me with a question? I was talking to this person and I need to know the text. That's the first problem. I need to know the text that I can tell them so they will understand this. And my response is usually back to them, why are you even talking to them? Because first, if you had read your Bible, you would know where the text is. And then secondly, because now you know where the text is, you should be able to understand the context in which it is written. Therefore, you wouldn't be sending my inbox, filling my inbox up with the inquiries. You would know the answers. But some people just don't understand. How about your understanding of prophecy? Can you open up the Bible to Revelation chapter 12, verse 17, and fully explain what that means? Can you give me Revelation chapter 14, verses 8 through 11, and tell me exactly what that means? Or Revelation chapter 22, verse 2, and explain what that means? How about Daniel chapter 9, verse 25 through 27? It's prophecy. Are we not a prophetic church? Yes or no? I heard 3 people. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, we are. There is so much information, rather, there is so much misinformation. And if you're not up aboard in terms of what is available and what is out there, you won't know. They will confuse you. Is there anybody who has come to the Lord because of your witness? If you can say yes, then there's a star already in your crown. But don't stop there. Get another one. There are people who are dying wanting to know. How much time? We gave you 10 months. Now you got two more months left to read the Bible. How much more time do you really need? How many has ever read the Bible completely through, cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation? 1, 2, 3. That's it. Let me ask you a question. You received a love letter from your girlfriend or your boyfriend, and it's 10 pages. Well, okay, your wife or your husband too. How many of you all just read the first page and just drop it? Don't you read everything? Yes. Why? Because you're interested. You love this person. Do you not love God too? Then why not read his love letter to you? So how much time do you think you might have before this is all over? Luke chapter 12, verse 16 through 21, one of my favorites, it says, "And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a rich man having brought forth plentifully, and he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. And he said, This is what I will do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul will be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that laid up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God? Let us not be victims of this. We don't know how much time God has left for each and every one of us. According to the United States Census Bureau in 2003, there are 107 deaths per minute worldwide. These translate to over 153,000 deaths per day. Over 56 million deaths per year. According to this report 11 years ago, I couldn't find one that was more accurate, more up to date. How about this one? Every minute, 3 people die in the Philippines. Every minute, 3 people die in the Philippines. Does anyone know of anybody who had a family member to die within this year? There's a couple of hands. I haven't had anyone to die in my family this year, or even last year, if I remember correctly. And the fact that 3 people die every minute in this country, I tried to remember, I'm an American. I don't want to be a part of that 3-minute thing. But we need to take time seriously. Those of us who have reached and gone over the 50-year mark, we understand better how sensitive and how serious time really is. I see some of you 17, 18, 19, you think you're going to live forever. You don't think that you're going to wake up one day and your body stops working on you. Your knees give out on you. You know, you can't reach for the pencil or pen like you used to because you can't bend your fingers because of arthritis. You know, I had my first physical last week, in over 35 years. I don't like doctors. They use that P word. Oh, you're going to feel a little pressure. That's pain. Starts with a P, wrong word though. Pain, I don't like pain. I don't like bad news. And yet when I went to the doctor and they give me the results, there's some bad news. You know, they tell me that I've got blockage in my heart. I could have done without hearing that news. But now I know it. Now I can do one or two things. I can take care of that so I can live longer, or I can let it go and continue living, doing things that's going to contribute to the blockage. And the next time you hear about Brother Roy, it'll be laying on one of those things I see on, what's that street here? Santa Mesa Street. I should know that's where I live. And it's near that gym, near the gymnasium where they play and they show the fights. They have that little place near Mercury Jug. You know which place I'm talking about? And every time I walk past it, I see people who are standing around and they've got this box. Somebody's in the box. I don't want to be in the box. At least not before it's time. So take the time to get this right, because we don't know how much more time that we have. Everything that you want to know, it's in the book. I had a professor who, for the whole semester, whenever we raised a question to him, he would only say this: it's in the book. All year, it was in the book. At the end of the semester, we learned two things. Number one, he didn't ask him any questions. Why? Because it was in the book. What was he trying to get over to us students? Everything that we want to know is in the book. But you will never know it unless you go in the book. I heard of a situation, an experience where a guard was talking to another person and said to that man, if they would hide a key in the book, a get out of jail free card, nobody would get out of the jail. Why? Because nobody reads. And I'm not suggesting to you to just read any book. I'm talking about reading the one book, and that is the Bible. But what about this particular book? There are a lot of deceptions and confusions. How many of us are aware of a movement called the Reformed Seventh-day Adventist movement? Have anybody heard about them? The Reformed Seventh-day Adventist movement? You have to be careful. One thing that I've come to understand, especially by being on Facebook, is this. The devil will get the world and the nominal churches on the Sunday issue. He's already got them. So what does he do for the remnant church? God's remnant church, Seventh-day Adventists. How is he affecting us? Number one, he has caused people in our own movement to claim that we need to be reformed, that we need to change some of our doctrines. We need to stop doing some of the things that has been our foundation principles for 160 years. Then you have another group called the Layman's movement, or the Davidians, another offshoot of Seventh-day Adventists. Also, you have a growing trend of anti-Trinitarians. Do you know what that group is? They are actually Seventh-day Adventists who claim there is no Trinity. Did you know that? How many of us believe in the Trinity? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. They're telling us that doesn't exist. Adventists. There's only one God. Yes, we know this, but He's three. They say no. Ellen White never said that. She didn't believe it herself. I was amazed when I heard this, because I study Ellen G. White and her writings. And I don't understand how they cannot see this. In fact, I don't understand how you can get through the first chapter of the book of John and not see the Trinity. Or even the first chapter of the book of Genesis. The very word, in the beginning, who? In the beginning, who? God. What is the Hebrew word for the word God in that text? Elohim. Elohim. Multiplicity. 3. How can they miss it? And then you have another group called the Lunar Sabbatarians. Do you know who these people are? Have you ever heard of them? The Lunar Sabbatarians? Anybody? I like interaction. Do you know what it is? Oh my goodness. You have to be careful. See, I try to stay up to date with this stuff. Because the Bible tells me that in the last days there's going to come out a lot of deceptions. Didn't the Bible also say, in the Spirit of Prophecy say, that in the last days there will be a shaking in the church? It's not talking about the churches that meet tomorrow. This text is referring to the church that we are attending here right now, Seventh-day Adventism. This group of people are saying that the Sabbath day that we keep is not the right one. They believe, according to the calendar, because the new moon actually begins the first day. So the first day of the month is the Sabbath. The 8th day is the Sabbath. The 15th day is the Sabbath. You see what I'm saying? So they're saying every month, the 1st, 8th, 15th, 23rd, 30th is the Sabbath. So I had an opportunity to talk with one of them, and I said to them, do you have a church that does this? No. So you're still worshiping in the Seventh-day Adventist church? Yes. So I'm confused. So if we're doing it wrong, then why are you worshiping with us? Duh. That doesn't make sense. And if we're doing it wrong, why don't you all just start your own and get away from us? Because we don't want that in ours. But yet, they're sitting and infiltrating our churches. And in fact, what I'm surprised, in the Philippines, this Reformed Seventh-day Adventist movement is a big thing in the southern part of the country. Mindanao. And there was another place down there where there's a batch of them. And every now and then I see them circulating in the groups, trying to teach people this stuff that is not a part of our foundation. And then you have another group that's talking about feast observers. And this is a growing trend among Seventh-day Adventists, where they're saying that we should observe all of the feasts. Do you know what the feasts are? The Day of Atonement, Tabernacles, Passover, and there's 4 more. And they're saying that we should be doing these. And didn't Jesus die for all of that? You know, didn't they all point to him? And that we're no longer supposed to do those kind of things? Is that your understanding? That's what mine is. And yet I learned one thing though, and I studied the feast since they brought it up. It is good that we should know the feasts and know how it pertains to the gospel, but we do not need to necessarily observe them. Like the Feast of Tabernacles. I'm not going outside and building something with bushes and leaves and sitting up under it. That's what they did back then. I don't have to do that today, but I understand why they did that. I understand what relevance it has to the gospel, but I don't need to do it. We're missing our foundations, and unless you know what they are, everyone who was baptized in this church went through the 28 foundations of this church. How many of us still remember what they are, even though we may have been here now for some time? I'm so thankful that on both sides of my family, I'm a 3rd generation Adventist. On both sides, they came in the 30s. And I come along, and I'm a 3rd generation. And when I sit up under my grandfather and my grandmother, who came into the faith, and we called it the truth back then. We've even lost being able to say that. When they came into the truth, they learned it. One side was Baptist, the other side was Methodist, and they joined and became Adventists. And I sit and I listen to them and I watch them and I learn the foundation, the firmness, the stability that they have. And I'm appreciative of what I have gotten from them. That's why I can say, give me that old-time religion. Because this new stuff that is coming out, that's not good enough for me. Give me that old-time religion. But now those of you who are now coming in, and some of you are the only Adventists of your family. I know that here, Catholicism is pretty big. And a lot of you may have come from Catholicism. Many of you may have family members who are still in that. And you're in a battle. They can't understand why you go to church on the wrong day. They cannot understand why you're not sitting around them eating just anything. But if you're not firm, guess what will happen to you? You will be shaken out. If the devil was able to confuse 1/3 of the angels who were in heaven, who were right in the face of God, and they were confused by one individual, what chance do you think you're going to stand against the devil? Especially after he's already gotten our family, Adam and Eve, all messed up. How many years have we been from that? We're worse off than they were. We need to understand what is our faith. It is safety in the Word. We need to absorb it daily, number one. Young believers, those of you who are new to the church, I'm not saying don't witness about the Bible, but witness about your life. The greatest testimony that you could ever give is how you live. And if it's necessary, then use words. There's nothing wrong about telling what Jesus has done for you in your walk. If you've had a problem that you were able to encounter and you know it was directly as a result of your prayers, tell somebody about that. Nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can ever doubt that about you. That's your testimony. That's your relationship that you have had with God. We're so quick to talk about David and slew a big giant, or Daniel dealing with a couple of cats in a cave, you know, and all these other issues. We're so great, we can know those stories back and forth. But don't you have the story? Do you? Why don't you tell that one? And if you're ashamed about what you've told, what you've done, then you'll be ashamed to talk about Jesus. And what did Jesus say about that? Those who were ashamed to talk about him, he will be ashamed to talk about you to the Father. I have done some awful things in my life. Last time I spoke with you, I showed you the book that I wrote. In that book are all the awful things in my life. And I made it available online on my website. Everybody can read about all the awful things that I have ever done. Some of those things are very shameful. You know, I'm not proud of them, but I did it. But what's the greater testimony is what Jesus had had done for me. That's the whole point of the message. What Jesus has done for me. Give us time to make it in to your kingdom. It is my prayer that something was said that will encourage you to read your Bible. With this new technology that I started using about a month ago now, I never wanted a cell phone. I didn't need one. Who's going to call me from the States? I'm not calling anybody. If you want to talk to me, there's Skype. Get me on Facebook. There's so many different ways, but I made the choice to go ahead and get one. And what I found out is, on this I've got like many different versions of the Bible that I'm going to read. I try to read 1 or 2 versions a year. And then I've got all of the Spirit of Prophecy, everything that Mrs. White wrote, I got it right here. To me, that's just fascinating. If I'm sitting on the jeepney, I can read my Bible. If I'm in a cab, I can read my Bible. If I was like those I see walking down the street, I can read my Bible. I've got no excuse for reading the Bible again, and again, and again, and again. Why? Because I'm in a position where somebody may ask me a question. I need to have an answer. God has laid much upon my life, and it's my responsibility to give back. It's time to let everybody know what God has done for us. So I invite you, if you haven't done it, start today. Read your Bible. It is the only thing that we have that is from God that is going to take us out of this planet, out of all the mess that we experience here today. The least amount of time it's taken me to read the Bible is 3 days. I decided to lock myself in completely, just read the Bible. Started on Friday at sunset, and by Monday morning, I had read it through. It's not that big of a book. It's relatively small. When you read something over and over and over again, and I have gotten to the point when somebody would say a text, I could tell you where it was. But I wanted to be like this other man that I know. He's now gone. And I stopped him one time because of a rumor that was said that he could quote the Bible from the beginning to the end without looking. He was in his 90s when I met him. He died at 105. He knew his God. And I asked him, I was a young preacher then, I was in my 20s. And I said, brother preacher, I said, is it true that you can quote the Bible from Genesis to Revelation? And he looked at me and he said, son, I don't know if that's true or not, but I tell you what, you give me a verse, I'll tell you the one before it, and I'll tell you the one after. That's somebody who knows their Bible. I'm not saying that we all should know it that way, but when somebody says, let's go to Nehemiah chapter 3, you shouldn't have to look at the table of contents. You should be able to go to Nehemiah chapter 3. And if somebody should give you a book, you should be able to know right away, oh, that's not in the Bible. You're trying to trick me. That's exactly what the enemy does. He tricks us. The only way, my friends, is that we're going to overcome. We haven't even seen the deceptions of what's going to happen to us. But if you're grounded on the Word of God, you can answer just like my professor did. It's in the book. Isn't that how Jesus won his battle with Satan after that 40-day fast? What did Christ do? He went to the book each time to defeat the enemy. And I recommend that you do the same. Let's have a closing prayer. Father, thank you so much. Thank you for allowing your Holy Spirit to dwell here today. And Father, when anyone under the hearing of my voice should hear a question, be given a question by their friend or family, if they should ever have a question themselves about something regarding Scripture, let them go to the book. Let it become settled within their heart. And Lord, help us that when it is time, that we might be saved into your kingdom. In Jesus' name is my prayer. Amen.